seat, please. Arden Richens. Good morning, Ms. Richens. Can I have counsel for the state make their appearance, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Patricia Cassell for the state.
Your Honor, Brad Bloodworth for the state.
Joseph Hill on behalf of the state.
Margaret Olson.
Welcome. Thank you. On behalf of Ms. Richens, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. Sky Lazaro on behalf of Ms. Richens.
Aaron Hinton on behalf of Ms. Richens.
Thank you. All right. We're here today for a detention hearing to determine whether Ms. Richens will continue to be held without bail during the pretrial period. I've read a lot of stuff. I've reviewed the defendant's motion to consider defendant's constitutional right to bail, the state's bench brief, defendant's motion to set conditions for release, the state's response, and I read your reply filed last evening, Ms. Lazaro.
Thank you. I apologize for the...
It's fine. This is a dynamic situation. I'd like to hear from the state first. Who's leading the presentation?
I am, Your Honor.
Ms. Cassell, how would you like to proceed?
Your Honor, we have 3 witnesses that we would like to call.
Okay.
We are prepared to call them now.
Who's the first witness?
The first witness is Detective O'Driscoll.
Do we have an exclusionary rule issue? I'm not sure it applies today, but I thought I'd ask.
I'm not sure it does either, given sort of the loose nature as far as the rules go on this hearing. Given the nature of the proceedings and I'm sure what's to come, extensive testimony in this case and a number of different issues, I would ask that it be imposed.
I mean, 1101C4 would say the rules of evidence do not apply today.
That is correct.
Exclusionary rule is a rule of evidence. Okay. It's a reasonable request, but it's denied.
Thank you.
Is it Detective O'Driscoll?
Yes.
Okay. If you'd step in front of Brittany, we'll get you sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter before the court to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, subject to the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Have a seat.
Good morning, Detective O'Driscoll. Can you please introduce yourself to the court and explain your relation to this case?
My name is Detective O'Driscoll. I've been with the Summit County Sheriff's Office for 7 years. I'm assigned to the Investigations Division. I was assigned to be the lead detective in this case in April of this year. This case is an active case and the investigation's ongoing.
Detective, what was the Sheriff's Office first involvement in this case?
On March 4th, 2022, at 3:22 hours, Summit County Dispatch received a 911 call regarding an unresponsive male in the Francis area.
Have you listened to that 911 call?
Yes,
Who placed that call?
the defendant, Corey Richens.
In addition to saying that someone was unresponsive, did Ms. Richens, the defendant, identify who was unresponsive and anything else about that person's condition?
Yes, she stated that it was her husband, Eric Richens, that was unresponsive, that he was cold to the touch and not breathing. Did
EMS and police respond to that address?
Yes,
Is that the family home?
yes,
Was a portion of the police and EMS response captured on police body camera video?
yes it was.
Have you reviewed that video?
Yes, I have.
On that video, what time does EMS pronounce Eric Richens dead?
03:58 hours on March 4th.
What, if anything else, does EMS say about how long he had been dead?
One of the EMS personnel made the comment that he had been dead a while.
Did the state medical examiner's office conduct an autopsy of Mr. Richens?
Yes, they did.
Have you reviewed the medical examiner's autopsy report
Yes,
and the toxicology report that's part of that?
yes.
What did the medical examiner identify as the cause of death?
Drug intoxication with the specific drug being fentanyl.
I'm going to now ask you, Detective, some questions about someone with the initial CL. Do you know who I'm talking about when I say CL?
Yes, I do.
Who is CL in relation to the defendant?
CL is an associate of the defendant. She cleaned houses for the defendant's business as well as her personal home at times.
Does CL have a criminal drug history?
Yes.
Is she under supervision in a different county, a county other than Summit County?
Yes, she is.
And is that in relation to certain drug charges?
Yes.
Does the court program in which she's in monitor treatment and testing, et cetera?
Yes.
Do you know how CL is performing in that program?
Based on my interactions with CL, she is progressing through the stages of that program, and that her personal outlook on her recovery is optimistic.
Have you interviewed CL in connection with this case?
Yes.
Approximately how much time have you spent interviewing her?
Over the course of multiple interviews, several hours each, I would say upwards of 10 hours.
Was CL in custody when you interviewed her?
Yes, she was.
Was that interview captured on video and audio recording?
Yes.
What, if any, promises did you make regarding, to CL regarding her cooperation with being interviewed?
CL was not made any specific promises, but at the outset of our interviews, we explained to her that her cooperation in our investigation would result in us working with the prosecutors that were responsible for the charges she was facing.
Did you express to CL the seriousness of this case as well as the charges she was facing?
Yes, we expressed to her the seriousness of the charges and the possible results of those charges. As well, we impressed upon her the importance or the value of her testimony in this case as it related to the charges that she was facing, and that her testimony or any information that she may have was more important to us.
Did you stress to CL that the information you were asking her about needed to be credible and verifiable?
Yes, we told her at the beginning of our interview that any information that she may have, we would need to corroborate in order for it to be of value to us.
Did CL cooperate with being interviewed?
Yes, she did.
Did CL know Eric Richens?
Yes, CL told us that during the time that she spent cleaning the Richens home, she got to know Eric, that she felt that he was a really good person, she liked him, and she was very saddened to hear that he had passed away.
Did there come a time when investigators executed a search warrant on CL's home?
Yes.
In executing that warrant, did you make any observations consistent with CL's testimony that she felt bad about Eric Richens' death?
Yes. Inside the home, we identified a bedroom that belonged to CL. In the bedroom, there was a mirror above a desk. On the mirror were taped or affixed several inspirational quotes that seemed to relate to her recovery and her drug court program. Amongst all those inspirational quotes was a newspaper clipping of Eric Richens' obituary.
Did you get the impression that part of the reason CL cooperated is because she felt bad for Eric Richens?
Yes, in fact, she said so many times in our interviews.
Detective, I want to turn now to what, if anything, CL told you about the defendant requesting that CL purchase fentanyl for the defendant. What did CL tell you?
In our interviews, CL told us that in early 2022, the defendant reached out to her either by phone call or text message requesting that she procure fentanyl for what the defendant reported was a investor who had a back injury.
And upon the defendant asking CL to get fentanyl, what did CL do?
CL told us that she reached out to an acquaintance of hers, acquaintance one, and requested that she introduce her to somebody that could sell her fentanyl.
Did acquaintance one introduce CL to someone that could sell CL fentanyl?
Yes, CL said that acquaintance one provided her with a phone number of another acquaintance, acquaintance two, who was someone that she knew could sell CL fentanyl.
And did CL say that she ultimately contacted acquaintance two?
Yes, she did.
What, if anything, did CL say about purchasing fentanyl from acquaintance two?
CL told us that she contacted acquaintance two after receiving his phone number and asked to arrange to meet to purchase some fentanyl from him. She stated that sometime in February, she believed she met up with acquaintance two at a Maverick gas station in Draper and purchased from him 15 to 30 round green-blue pills, which she understood to be fentanyl.
Using phone records through the course of your interview with CL, were you ultimately able to narrow down on what that date was in February that CL purchased fentanyl from acquaintance two at the Maverick in Draper?
Yes, based on forensic evidence, we were able to determine that that date was February 11th, 2022.
What, if anything, did CL say about what she did with the fentanyl pills that she purchased from acquaintance two?
CL told us that after purchasing the pills from acquaintance two, she returned home to her house in Heber. She said that either later that night or the next day, the defendant met her in the driveway of that home and did a hand-to-hand exchange of pills for cash.
I'm going to turn now, Detective, to some questions regarding witnesses who corroborate CL's testimony, okay?
Okay.
You mentioned acquaintance number one. Have investigators interviewed acquaintance one?
Yes.
Have you reviewed body camera, audio and video of that interview?
Yes.
Does acquaintance one corroborate CL's testimony?
Yes. She stated that CL contacted her in early 2022 and asked for someone that could sell her fentanyl. In the body cam, she also retrieves her cell phone and shows investigators the messages that corroborated that.
And what kind of messages were they?
They were messages between acquaintance one and CL on Facebook Messenger app.
And have you reviewed those messages?
Yes.
Is the first of those messages dated February 6, 2022 at 1:37 p.m.?
Yes.
Does it read, text me, I've got a question, won't do it on this?
Yes.
And that's CL writing acquaintance one, asking acquaintance one to text CL because she didn't want to write over Facebook Messenger?
Correct.
Did acquaintance one say whether or not she ever, in response, contacted CL?
Yes. She said that she then either texted or called her subsequent to her request.
You testified that acquaintance two sold fentanyl pills to CL at the Maverick in Draper. Have investigators interviewed acquaintance two?
Yes.
Have you reviewed body camera, audio, and video of that interview?
Yes, I have.
Is acquaintance two able to corroborate CL's testimony?
Yes, acquaintance two was able to recall that he sold fentanyl pills to a friend of acquaintance one's in early 2022 at a Maverick gas station in Draper.
I'm going to turn now, Detective, to some forensic data questions. and whether forensic data corroborates CL's narrative, okay?
Okay.
Have you reviewed carrier records of the defendant's phone?
Yes.
And I want to just clarify one thing. I'm talking right now about carrier records, different than cell data records. We'll have an expert testify about cell data records in a moment. I'm just going to ask you about the carrier records, okay?
Okay.
What, if anything, do the carrier records for the defendant's phone, or what, if anything, in the carrier records for defendant's phone corroborate CL's testimony?
The cell records from the defendant's phone show several phone calls back and forth between her and CL in early 2022.
Do they show any text messages back and forth between the defendant and CL?
Yes, several.
Have you reviewed those text messages?
We were only able to see the timestamps and who the sender and receiver was. We're not able to see the content of those messages because they appear to be deleted from both the defendant's phone and CL's phone.
Have you reviewed the call history and carrier records of CL's phone?
Yes.
Does CL's carrier records and call history corroborate CL's testimony?
Yes.
Is there a particular set of calls on February 11th, 2022 between 5:19 p.m. and 6:52 p.m. in CL's phone history?
Yes.
Did you question CL regarding those calls?
Yes. She said those calls were to acquaintance 2 and that they were to arrange the specific date and time to pick up fentanyl in Draper.
Turning now from CL's purchasing fentanyl for the defendant to the defendant's purported timeline on the night of Eric Richens' death, okay?
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that police interactions with the defendant were captured on video. Have you reviewed that video?
Yes, I have.
Did the defendant provide police with a written statement in the early morning of March 4th, 2022?
Yes, she did.
Have you reviewed that statement?
Yes.
What on the early morning of Eric Richens' death did the defendant report had happened that evening?
She stated that the last time that she saw Eric alive was between 9:30 and 9:45 p.m. She stated that before going to bed, they had had a drink together to celebrate closing on a house for her business. She said that they got in bed between 9:30 and 9:45, and that shortly after getting into bed, one of the children had a nightmare, and that the defendant got out of bed and went to be with that child in their bedroom and slept in that bedroom until 3 a.m. or around 3 a.m. when she woke. She stated she returned to her own bedroom, got into bed, and felt that Eric was cold to the touch. She stated that she turned the light on, saw that he wasn't breathing and that he didn't look normal, and that she then called 911.
Did the defendant say whether anyone else was in their home other than the defendant, her husband Eric Richens, and their 3 young children?
No, she stated no one else was in the home.
Turning now to the defendant's statements regarding whether she performed CPR on her husband, okay?
Okay.
Did the defendant tell investigators when they arrived at her home shortly after she called 911 whether or not she performed CPR on Eric Richens?
Yes, she reported that she did.
I'm going to refer to someone now as defendant's best friend. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
What, if anything, did the defendant tell her best friend regarding whether she performed CPR on Eric Richens?
Investigators found text messages between the defendant and her best friend. That was her explanation to her friend that she conducted CPR on Eric prior to EMS arrival.
And do those text messages read, "I pumped so damn hard, so hard, screaming at him to come back to life"?
Yes.
You testified earlier, Detective, that EMS responded. Have you interviewed the first EMS responder?
Yes, I have.
What observations did that EMS responder make?
They told me that when they arrived, they began CPR compressions on Eric, and that upon beginning those compressions, Eric began to foam at the mouth. He stated that that observation indicated that CPR was not likely conducted before he arrived.
Detective, as part of your investigation, did you look into whether Eric Richens used illicit drugs?
Yes.
What did you determine?
Based on the interviews that we conducted with those who knew Eric well, all stated that he did not use illicit drugs other than consuming THC gummies on occasion.
Do those that you spoke to include Eric's two best friends that he's known since high school?
Yes, both made the same statement, that they never knew Eric to use any illicit substances other than the THC gummies.
When I reference a hunting guide in Mexico by the initials TR, do you know who I'm referring to?
Yes.
Did you speak to this hunting guide?
Other Summit County detectives did, yes.
And what did this hunting guide, if anything, say about Eric Richens using illicit drugs while hunting in Mexico?
The guide told detectives that several of their clients, when they come to Mexico, will seek out someone that can put them in contact with illicit substances while they are down there for their hunt. He stated that Eric Richens was not one of these, that Eric was solely focused on the hunt.
Has the defendant made any statements regarding whether her husband, Eric Richens, used illicit drugs other than THC?
Yes, in several statements made by the defendant throughout the investigation, there have been at least 10 times that she has said that Eric does not use illicit substances and did not use illicit substances.
And just to be clear, other than THC?
Other than the THC gummies, correct.
On the night Eric Richens died, did investigators search the Richens home?
Yes.
Did they find any illicit drugs?
No.
Did they find any paraphernalia or packaging or other evidence of illicit drugs?
No.
Did they find fentanyl anywhere in the home?
Only that which was in Eric's body.
I'm going to now shift, Detective, from the night of Eric's death to a second drug buy initiated before his death and concluded after his death, okay?
Okay.
What, if anything, did CL tell you about the defendant approaching CL a second time for fentanyl?
CL told us that approximately a week after delivering the first load of fentanyl, the defendant reached out to her again by text or call and said that she wanted some more fentanyl that was stronger than the previous batch.
And in response, what, if anything, did CL do?
CL told us that she again reached out to acquaintance 1 because she had lost the phone number for acquaintance 2 and again requested from acquaintance 1 that she provide her with the phone number for acquaintance 2. She also made other statements in Facebook messages regarding that request.
In your interview or detective's interview rather, with acquaintance 1, did she corroborate that indeed CL reached back out to her asking for acquaintance 2's phone number?
Yes, in the same Facebook Messenger, it showed the 2 different contacts on the 2 different dates.
And does the second Facebook message, was it dated February 25th, 2022 at 9:40 p.m.?
Yes,
And does it read, "I need those again, but more, and I don't got a ride, I lost your friend's number"?
correct.
Did CL and acquaintance 1 both say that acquaintance 1 provided CL with acquaintance 2's phone number again?
Yes.
What then, if anything, did CL do with acquaintance 2's phone number the second time?
CL told us that she again contacted acquaintance 2 and arranged again to meet up at the same Maverick gas station in Draper to purchase again 15 to 30, this time blue round pills that she understood to be fentanyl.
Between, on the way to the Draper and Maverick, the second time, when she purchased 15, I'm sorry, did you say 15 to 30? What-
Yes, 15 to 30 pills.
Which she believed to be fentanyl. Did she make any stops along the way?
Yes, CL told us that the second time that she procured fentanyl for the defendant, she did not have a vehicle to drive on that date. She said that she reached out to a friend, acquaintance 3, and asked that he give her a ride to go purchase fentanyl. She said that he did pick her up, that they traveled from Heber City to the defendant's home in Francis, where, according to CL, the defendant had told her there was a check waiting under the mat at the defendant's home. She said that she checked under the mat and didn't find a check, and so she knocked on the defendant's door, and the defendant came to the door and wrote her a check from her business, from the defendant's business, for $1,300 for the purchase of the fentanyl. CL told us that afterwards they drove to the America First Credit Union in Heber City, where CL banks, and cashed the check and deposited $300 of it into her account at America First Credit Union. She said that after stopping at the bank and getting the cash, they then drove to the Maverick gas station in Draper and purchased the pills from acquaintance 2.
Did investigators execute a warrant at the America First Credit Union in Heber?
Yes, and that warrant returned a copy of the check written from the defendant's business account in the name of CL, and a receipt that shows that it was cashed and that $300 were deposited into CL's account.
And then CL ultimately, being driven by acquaintance 3, went to the Maverick in Draper and purchased fentanyl a second time from acquaintance 2.
Correct.
What, if anything, does acquaintance 2 say that corroborates CL's testimony?
Acquaintance 2 in his interview stated that he remembered selling fentanyl to a friend of acquaintance 1's on 2 separate occasions at the same Maverick gas station in Draper. He also said that he remembered the second time that he sold her the pills that CL was with another person who matched the age and gender of acquaintance 3.
Have you interviewed acquaintance 3?
Yes.
What, if anything, does acquaintance 3 say to corroborate CL's testimony?
Acquaintance 3 corroborated all the same details that CL told us about that day, and in fact showed us text messages on his phone that also corroborated that story.
Detective, I'm going to ask you now some questions about what are commonly known as bug-out bags, okay?
Okay.
Did investigators execute several search warrants on the defendant's home or the family home?
Yes.
Did those warrants identify what are commonly known as bug-out bags?
Yes. There were several duffel bags stored in the garage, along with backpack-sized day packs, and each was identical and labeled for a different member of the Richens family. Those backpacks were seized subject to a warrant and were inventoried and photographed. Inside the bags, detectives located several items that would be useful in an emergency situation. But the most interesting were documents needed for travel for each member of the family. Each bag contained a photocopy of a state-issued ID in the children's case, along with passports for Eric and the defendant, as well as global entry travel cards for both Eric and the defendant.
Did those bags also contain clothing, toiletries, that kind of thing?
Yes.
Do detectives know when those bags were packed?
No.
And there was a bag for Eric as well, is that right?
Correct.
I have no further questions for you. Ms. Lazar on mine. Thank you.